Hi, this is someone from MinuteEarth. Every time we breathe, we get older. Not literally, but like we get 1 year closer to being old, and aging seems inevitable. But why do we age at all? To answer that question, scientists are studying everything from tiny cells to super old tortoises to figure out what makes us tick-tock, tick-tock, tick-tock. First, let's look at what happens to our cells as we age. Our cells contain structures called telomeres, which are like protective plastic at the ends of our shoelaces. They help protect our genes, which are like the really important bits of our cells. But every time a cell divides, its telomeres get shorter and shorter. And when they get too short, they can't protect those genes anymore. So those genes get damaged. In other words, our cells' built-in protective mechanisms fail, and our bodies can't repair them fast enough. In a young, healthy body, the number of cells in the right state of health roughly balances the number of cells that die. But as we get older, more and more cells start getting damaged. And once cells get damaged, they don't divide as much, so fewer new cells are made. As a result, the balance tips. There are more dead cells than new cells, so tissues start to shrink. And shrinking tissues contribute to many of the symptoms we associate with old age. So one theory of aging is that it's programmed into our cells. It's basically like a biological countdown that starts ticking the second our cells are created. And eventually, when the countdown hits 0, our cells stop working properly and we die. But there's no evidence that such a countdown actually exists in our cells. So this program theory hasn't really held up. Instead, most scientists think that aging is caused by damage that accumulates over time. That damage could come from things like exposure to radiation or toxins. But it can also come from everyday activities like metabolizing food, which produces unstable molecules called free radicals that can damage cells. We can neutralize those molecules with antioxidants like vitamin C or E. And some scientists think that eating antioxidant-rich foods might help us live longer. But studies have been inconsistent about whether that's true. And free radicals are only one potential source of cellular damage. Another is oxidation, which can break down the proteins, fats, and DNA in our cells. Oxidation is necessary for life. Like our cells use oxidation to turn food into energy, but that process generates reactive molecules that cause damage. Again, our bodies have antioxidant systems that neutralize these molecules. But if those systems get overwhelmed, oxidation can damage cells. Now, oxidation is thought to be one of the main sources of cellular damage as we age. But not everyone ages at the same rate. Some animals seem to age way slower than others. Like a male giant tortoise can live for over 100 years, but a male mouse only lives for about 2 years. And that's not because mice reproduce faster than tortoises. It's just a fact of life. Male mice just happen to have shorter lifespans than female mice. But there are also species that defy the usual aging trajectory. Jellyfish, for instance, are capable of reversing their aging. When times are tough, like when food is scarce, they revert to an earlier stage of development, becoming what scientists call biologically immortal. In this state, they can keep on reproducing indefinitely, but they need to be in an aquatic environment. When jellyfish leave the water, though, they revert back to their adult forms and start aging normally. So figuring out how and why certain species age slower or not at all could help scientists develop interventions to help people age slower. 2. One place scientists are looking for anti-aging clues is in single-cell organisms called ciliates, which can live for hundreds of years. And unlike most ciliates, they reproduce both sexually and asexually. Scientists recently discovered that ciliates that reproduce sexually experience less damage from oxidation than those that reproduce asexually. And sexual reproduction doesn't just make offspring with new combinations of genes. It can also help existing cells repair their damaged DNA. Maybe this helps explain why ciliates that reproduce sexually live longer. What's more, the benefit appears to be linked to a protein complex that exchanges genetic material between mates during sex. So ciliates that exchange genetic material live longer than ciliates that don't. Because the longer a ciliate goes without exchanging genetic material, the more damaged its DNA becomes, the ciliate is more likely to die. We're still a long way from developing an anti-aging pill that involves swapping DNA with your partner. But this and other research is shedding light on what causes aging and what slows it down. Understanding the mechanics of aging could help researchers develop ways to slow it down or even reverse it. For instance, there's an enzyme called telomerase, which keeps telomeres from getting too short. Telomerase is active in lots of stem cells and germ cells, but it's usually turned off in adult cells. But scientists have found a way to activate it in adult cells. And in 2009, they reported that reactivating telomerase in old mice restored their muscle function. Researchers are also exploring a class of drugs called rapalogs, which inhibit a cellular process called mTOR signaling. Rapalogs have already been shown to extend the lifespan of single-celled organisms and some simple multicellular organisms. An early clinical trial suggests that rapalogs may help prevent age-related diseases in humans. Of course, aging isn't always bad. Like getting older helps us gain knowledge and experience. So while some people might want to take anti-aging drugs, others won't. So if anti-aging interventions become available, we'll all have to grapple with some serious ethical questions about who should have access to them and what aging even means for individuals and societies. Regardless of what we decide to do about aging, though, understanding the science behind it can help us appreciate the amazing complexity of life and make informed decisions about how to take care of ourselves as we get older. So here's a minute challenge. How old do you think this turtle is? You can tweet your guess at us. And be sure to follow us for more updates. Some people think that aging is inevitable and that death is just something we have to accept. But recent research suggests that death is optional. You see, scientists used to think that getting older was unavoidable and that dying was simply a fact of life. But now they know that death can be postponed indefinitely. Let me repeat that. Death can be postponed indefinitely. There are many animals that don't die of old age. For example, there's a species of jellyfish that never dies. And there's also a species of crustacean that stops aging after it reaches sexual maturity. If we can understand the mechanisms that allow these animals to live forever, we may be able to apply them to humans. Of course, humans have a long history of trying to cheat death. The ancient Egyptians practiced elaborate burial rituals in the hopes of preserving their bodies for the afterlife. And today, some people spend thousands of dollars on anti-aging creams and supplements. But these efforts are unlikely to work unless we understand the science of aging, and that's where you come in. If you'd like to learn more about the science of aging, you can check out a recent review article published in the journal Nature. The article covers everything from the biology of aging to the ethics of anti-aging medicine. And if you're still curious about how to live forever, you can always try moving to Hawaii. After all, the average lifespan is about 80 years, which is pretty close to immortality. Thanks for watching this video, which was brought to you by a university and a grant from a national foundation.